From the outset, I'd just like to say that Zurich is delighted to be partnering with the SFA here this evening, and indeed for the full series of Better Business shows. In fact, I'm delighted this evening I get a chance to talk to you for 10 minutes or so about your insurance needs, and I don't often get the chance to do that. But really, I suppose, over the course of this 10 minutes, if I was to get one message across, I would like it to be that I would help you to think about insurance and to start to foster a risk awareness culture within your businesses. And the reason you should start thinking about fostering a risk awareness culture is that by doing so, you will be able to contain your insurance costs or indeed hopefully reduce them. So maybe I'll start by just talking a little bit about Zurich. We are a global insurer, as some of you may know. We have over 33 million customers in 170 countries around the world. We pay out every year on over 4 million individual claims. However, we're also very much a local insurer. We're very much committed to the Irish market. We have our European base here in Dublin, and between Dublin and Wexford, we have over 1,000 employees here in Ireland. Insurance is a funny product in many ways because, what is it but a promise? It's the promise from us as an insurer to you as a client that in your time of need that we'll deliver. We'll deliver when it really matters to you. So it's a promise. That's what we're offering for sale. And what I'd like you to think about is when you go to place your insurance with your insurer the next time, is just to think about how capable your insurer is of delivering on that promise. For me, there are two sort of main strands to how any insurer delivers on that promise. First of all, their financial stability. Zurich has an AA- rating from Standard & Poor's, which is the highest in the Irish insurance market. But also importantly is their commitment to customer service. Within Zurich, we have been awarded #1 for service excellence by both the Irish Brokers Association and the Professional Insurance Brokers Association. And they're the two insurance brokers bodies that are the biggest bodies in the country. So we have some pedigree in terms of customer service. So they're the important things I think to look out for. Insurance is a significant cost. It's a significant cost for all of your businesses. And because it's a significant cost, I think it warrants your attention and your focus. And sometimes we see that some companies don't really pay it the attention that they should. Sometimes I think people feel they can't do very much about their insurance cost. They'll shop around maybe with a few different insurers, but they can't fundamentally affect what that premium may be. And I'd like just to challenge that a little bit here this evening, because I think the more risk aware that you are as an owner-manager in your business, and the more detail you can provide to your insurer or to your broker, the better chance you have of getting a competitive premium and getting cover in the first place. So it's something that really is worth you paying some attention to. I mentioned there, delivering when it matters, and I suppose when it really matters is perhaps, if we take an extreme example, is when there's some extreme weather event, as we in the insurance business would call it. So we've had a lot of flooding in Ireland over the last couple of years. If you look at the image on the left-hand side, that was Dundrum Town Centre, just a few miles up the road from us here. And that photo was taken on the 24th of October last year, when, as you probably remember, we had this horrific flooding around Dublin. There was about a month's rain came down in a couple of hours, with very significant flooding as a consequence. A client of ours, Pamela Scott, is based within Dundrum Town Centre, and being the 24th of October and they being a fashion retailer, they had just got in all of their Christmas stock. So of course it was a bit of a disaster. They had a very high stock level in the store, and the flooding hit just at exactly the wrong period. Because we knew their business well, we were able to get onto the ground very quickly, help them assess their loss and replace their stock. And I think credit to lots of people, but that business was up and running within 3 working days of the flood that you see there. So that was quite an achievement. And those kind of results are better easy to achieve when, as an insurer, you know the business of your insured well. And that's what happened in this case. And it's not a standalone case. The Windsor Motors example on the right-hand side was Cork a year or so previous to that. And again, a similar situation, severe flooding, which resulted in a lot of stock being written off, but being back up and again, being back on their feet and in business within a week. So they're extreme examples, and I suppose it's also worth mentioning, though, that it's not always the extreme things you need to look out for. Your property and your equipment are probably the biggest assets a lot of you have, but therefore they can also be your biggest losses. And doing some of the ordinary things well is important. So when there's heavy rain, like there has been over the last number of days, it's making sure that your roof is clear, the gutters and valleys are clear on your roof, your drains are clear. And again, it's the kind of thing, in a way I feel a bit foolish saying it, but how many of us actually do it? It's one of these things you think you should do, but perhaps you don't get around to. So I would encourage you to do it. And maybe the best way to do stuff like this, though, is to appoint someone responsible for risk within your business. And that's something I'd ask you all to seriously think about this evening. Appoint a risk officer within your business. That perhaps sounds a little bit grandiose, a risk officer, but really what I mean is someone who will walk around your premise with an eye for risk. Because by doing that, you can really, first of all, by appointing someone, you begin to instill a kind of a risk awareness culture, but also you can really begin to change things within your organisation and cut down on the risk that there may be there. Again, as I say, it's a matter of doing some of the basic stuff right, making sure that your machinery is fit for purpose with regular inspection, and that inspection obviously done by properly trained staff, records being kept. It's making sure that equipment cables are secured and covered. You notice here you've got cables going across those architraves of the door, the emergency exits. It's the right way to do it, not across the floor. These are just the basic things, but it's a matter of walking into a room and being aware of these things. That's really what I'm encouraging you to do. Particularly where you've got what we would call hot work, anything that's capable of ignition within your premise. These are the things to be really careful of. When soldering or welding equipment particularly is not being used, that it's stopped and it's shut down and secure. Really important. And that people use the personal protective equipment that's around and about, whether it's shields or goggles and so forth. I'd like to just talk a little bit about health and safety. The Personal Injuries Assessment Board tells us that 15% of all awards are public liability awards, and that the average payout is just over 23,000. And this is something for everyone to be aware of. And 2/3 of all claims are for the old favourites of slips, trips and falls. So what it's really important is that your floor surfaces are kept clear, that they're level, that there's good lighting around them, and I suppose really that there's effective supervision around your premises as well, particularly when you have visitors. Walk them in and walk them off. It's easy to get into a habit of waving someone goodbye, but actually physically walk them off the premise. It's important. Make sure that you have accident reporting, and again your chief officer, your risk officer could do this for you. Make sure you report accidents, keep a register of them. The other thing which is important in terms of public liability is trying to reduce manual handling on your premise. The most common thing on sick certs for any business in the country is either back pain or injury or stress. Stress is probably a bit more difficult to do something about, but back injury or pain is certainly something you can do. You can hopefully try to engineer manual handling out of your processes if at all possible. If you can't do that, make sure you have the best equipment you can to aid manual handling, and that you rotate people around in the roles so they have less exposure. All really important things to try to do. I'd like just to talk about security for a moment. The SFA actually have just completed their 8th National Small Business Crime Survey. And what that tells us is that 57% of firms have experienced an increase in crime in the past 2 years. And actually over 1/3 have been victims of crime in that same period. What we also see when you look within the figures, though, is that the average cost of this crime is €4,500, which actually is a relatively small amount of money. And what that tells us is that a lot of this crime is opportunistic. And because it's opportunistic, it's something that is relatively easy to try and avoid. And the way that we can avoid it is by taking the normal security procedures and making sure that we've adequate locking on our windows and doors, that we've a monitored intruder alarm, and importantly that it's turned on. And also things like valuable stock. Do keep them out of sight, particularly in overnight situations. If you have an overnight safe, put your valuable stock into it, but at least keep it out of sight of windows and so forth. And particularly for those of you who mightn't have CCTV on your premise, and I know that about half of small firms do have CCTV, but for those of you who don't, make sure you do keep a record of visitors who have come on and off your premise. Because very often, unfortunately, what we see is that people go onto a premise to kind of scout it out for later on. So do keep a record of those you have on and off your premise. A fundamental question, I suppose, for everyone in the room is are you adequately insured, and what is your level of cover across various different types of risks? And what I would encourage everyone here again to do is to talk to your insurer or your broker to make sure that you have adequate coverage. As a small business owner or manager here, you have a selection of different risks that you need to guard against. All insurers will offer a combined package, and therefore that's what you should look for your business. The advantage of going for a combined insurance package from your insurer is that it means that all of your covers are in one policy. And the main advantage of that is that by having all of your covers in one policy, it means that you've no duplication. And no duplication means that you're not paying for the same cover twice. So that's the big advantage of a combined insurance policy. So any insurer will provide that for you. So make sure that you talk about that. There are also other benefits to it. For instance, you can have more than one premise on one policy and so forth. So that's really worth checking out. O'Leary Insurance Group is the appointed broker, the appointed insurance broker to the Small Firms Association. And Zurich is very happy to partner with O'Leary to provide business insurance solutions for you guys. So look, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, and hope you enjoy the presentation. Thank you very much.